Hello, and welcome to the Truthwards podcast, where we discuss the details of natural solutions for chronic health conditions. I'm Natalie Kasana, and I'm so happy and grateful that you are listening. I hope you will enjoy it or get something useful out of this series. In this episode, you'll hear about Maya's experience resolving menstrual cramps using natural solutions, and also working through anxiety and eczema, and all the details of what worked and what didn't work for her along the way. I'd like to start by noting that the views and opinions shared during this podcast are my own and do not reflect the views of my employer or any affiliated organizations. That equally applies to any guests that may appear on the podcast as well. Additionally, because we will be talking about health topics, I want to make clear that I am not a licensed healthcare professional, and any advice shared on this podcast is not meant to be a substitute for professional medical advice, nor a guarantee that the same results would be seen by anyone else. I would always encourage anyone to seek the opinion of a healthcare provider before trying any possible healing paths. It is important to establish a clinical diagnosis and assess possible risks or interference with current medications. Maya, thank you so much for coming on the Truthwords podcast and for being willing to share your experience and the details of it with us. I'm so excited to hear it.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
And a little bit of background for our listeners. Maya managed to outsmart her menstrual cramps using natural solutions, something that so many women, myself included, would love to know how to do. And Maya is a menstrual cycle coach, and she works with women to better understand their cycles and their hormones and get in alignment with their bodies. Through our recent conversations, I learned that she also experienced anxiety and was able to work through that, as well as being well along her way working through eczema. So I'm really intrigued to hear about what's worked for you, Maya, what hasn't worked maybe, and what you see as the potential overlaps or intersection between some of these conditions, and also what you've learned from working with other women and other people and any insights you've had on that. So a lot to unpack here. Let's get started. First, let's pretend for a sec that people don't know what menstrual cramps are. Could you explain for a moment at a high level, what did you experience with your symptoms and what you found to be the most effective solution or type of solution for menstrual cramps?
Yeah. Okay, well, I can describe it from an outsider point of view because I got menstrual cramps before I knew what they were and before I was even menstruating. When I was about 10, I started getting these really deep aches in my pelvis and legs, down my legs, and they would come and I did not understand what they were. And then after a few months of that, or I didn't know it was happening every month, but retrospectively, I know it was. Then I got my period, and I remember thinking, I was in singing class with my singing teacher, and I remember thinking, oh my God, did I eat something bad? Like, I'm gonna really have to go to the bathroom. So I excused myself, and that's when I got my period. So the cramps started really early and then continued throughout my teen years, and were worse sometimes than others. I had cramps every month, but some months they were so bad that I had to like bear down and breathe through them. Like I couldn't really talk through them or anything. And I will say, like, I never had cramps that made me throw up or faint. I know women really struggle with debilitating menstrual cramps. I just had very painful cramps that I had to take pills for, like Advil or whatever. And then I started to get more into holistic health, actually because of the eczema that I was experiencing and other issues like anxiety and gut stuff. It was all connected. So when I started going down that route, I discovered this whole world of menstrual cycle awareness, cycle syncing, and realized that there might be natural ways to heal my cramps as well.
When you were experiencing these menstrual cramps, did you generally just take ibuprofen or some sort of medicine like that? And did those solutions work for you, or were you looking for something else to kind of help? Or like you said, was it for something completely different that you actually ended up going down that route?
Yeah, I have a really interesting relationship with my menstrual cycle because from when I was really young, I kind of relished in it. Like I loved it. I loved the fact that I was becoming a woman, and I like was secretly loving it because I knew that everyone else kind of thought it was like annoying. So I kind of pretended to agree, but I didn't. So
Yeah.
when I was having the menstrual cramps, if I had to do anything, I would take pills, and usually they would get better. Um, but weirdly enough, if I was just home, I knew I could be home, I wouldn't take the pills on purpose, and I would just kind of sit with the pain, and I would have a hot water bottle or something. I did not do that consciously. But there was something going on inside of me even back then when I was a teenager. I knew that there was something important meeting this pain and not suppressing it.
Wow, that's so
So,
wise.
yeah, yeah, and my mom raised me with natural stuff as well, and also like emotional. I mean, she was a expressive arts therapist, so I had kind of that
Wow.
like holding and background. But as a teenager, I pushed back against it because, of course, we push back against our moms. So I was into the mainstream. Like I was into just popping a pill, and I also bought into this idea that we can do anything on our periods. That's feminism. Like we just have to push through, put in a tampon, take some pills, and go on with our day.
Wait, that's not
Um,
how it's supposed to be? Because I feel like I still do that.
yeah, I really changed my mind about that after practicing cycle awareness. Full 180. I think that we are really, really missing out on, I mean, one of the most powerful experiences we can have as women when we rest during our bleed. And what I realized eventually, which is getting into what actually worked for my cramps, was that my cramps were really the only way I would allow myself to rest. So I was holding on to the pain because otherwise I would have no way to force myself to rest. Even when I started cycle awareness, I was eating healthy. I was doing all these things. I was like, why am I still getting cramps? I'm doing everything right. And I realized that it was because I had a subconscious fear that if I didn't have cramps anymore, I wouldn't rest during that time.
Oh my gosh. So you were
So,
like
yeah.
holding on to that because you didn't want to
Yeah.
let it go. Maybe let's back up for one sec. I know you mentioned already that, you had a fair amount of exposure to natural solutions and ways of thinking from your mom as a kid.
Mhm.
Is there anything else from your childhood that you think maybe influenced, what you experienced as conditions or what you found as solutions? Any other interesting maybe factors from your childhood?
That's interesting. I'm trying to think where to start. I think um, one thing is that I did grow up in a very health conscious environment in general. Like I grew up in Berkeley, California,
Mm.
which is a very, I think I grew up, it was very normal for everyone to be on some kind of diet all the time. It was very health conscious. Everyone was gluten free and sugar free, like early on.
Wow.
And my mom also, especially around when I was little and everyone was getting colds and things, she was very like, take your echinacea, take your vitamin C. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that started early, and I want to say two things about that. One thing was that it was good because it gave me this holistic foundation, but also it set me up to be hyper aware of health and what was going on in my body in a way that later on maybe wasn't so good actually.
Hmm. And then, okay, so you already kind of explained a bit about your symptoms and what were going through. When you started to get menstrual cramps, you explained how, you got them at a young age, around 10, and then did they start to get worse over time, or what kind of pushed you into actually looking into more details around the natural solutions specifically for menstrual cramps?
Yeah, they would get worse now looking back around really stressful times. I didn't know that at the time. And actually, I would say I didn't even consider looking into natural solutions for menstrual cramps because it was like it's so conditioned in us that it's just a normal part of being a woman.
Yep.
So I think there were two things that happened. One, I found a community that said, actually, no, menstrual cramps aren't normal. They're common, but they're not normal. And I said, wow, okay, I can live without this thing. That would be kind of cool. And
Yeah.
then second, I lost my period, or I didn't lose my period completely, but I got a super irregular cycle because of a strict diet that I was on.
Oh, wow.
And that messed up other aspects of my cycle. So that's when I really started to get into, okay, it's not just about the cramps, it's about the entire cycle, how I'm living throughout the 25 to 28 days or whatever. That's going to impact how that bleed experience is for me.
Fascinating. And that makes a lot of sense. So then when you started to realize this, what were the things like diet or mental health or whatever other types of solutions that you tried that ended up maybe working or not working?
Yeah. Okay, so I can start with what did not work because that's easy. A lot of the other things that I was trying for my other health issues, like strict dieting, like low carb diets, especially, those really messed up my cycle. Made cramps worse, made my cycles longer or shorter, made my ovulation disappear. Um, so those did not work for me. What did really help was slowing down, like slowing way down, especially in the second half of my cycle leading up to my menstruation, and really allowing myself to rest during that time.
How did you manage to pull that off in this fast-paced life with school and work? And what
Yeah.
techniques did you use, or how did you manage that? Because that's so hard for many people to pull off.
Yeah, no, everyone, all of my clients, everyone on my Instagram page, this is the one question they ask. They're like, okay, but how am I supposed to do that?
Yeah, yeah.
um, so first I'll say that when you're not able to commit 100% to a cyclical life, because the world isn't cyclical at this moment,
Yeah.
then it's just a different way you show up. It's an energetic shift inside of yourself, and it's a different level of expectation. So, for example, when I worked in restaurants, I would have to go to work. I couldn't just sell my shift because my period came, unfortunately. So I would show up really differently. I would ask, if it was possible to work in the bar rather than, waiting tables, or to be in the dish room just so I didn't have to talk to people. Like little ways that you can adjust your life. For example, if you're going to meet with a group of friends, meet with them for just an hour, or make sure you have at least a little 20-minute break between activities. Those are little ways that I kind of managed to reconnect with myself and find that kind of restfulness within the busy life. So
I
it's
love
really
that.
an internal shift. Yeah.
From when you first found out about the idea that your cycle doesn't have to be painful and there are potentially natural ways to help resolve that, how long did it take for you to, let's say, learn all of those techniques and implement them in your life? And then how long for you to see some improvement in your cycle and how you experienced menstrual cramps?
Yeah, well, I'll answer this kind of in two ways because I know as a menstrual cycle coach who studied this that if you want to, fix these issues, it takes 90 to 100 days from when your egg is like developing to when you actually release it. So the cycle that you're experiencing now is a result of that last 3 months. So I would say I've personally experienced that as well. When I was on the low carb diet, when I transitioned off of it, it took about 3 months for my cycle to return to normal. Um, and then personally, I learned about all this stuff like 3 years ago. But because I was doing other things to try to heal other parts of my health, it kind of would interrupt my process with cramps. So I would say in terms of the cramps, I have not had, I mean, I have not taken painkillers for cramps in like 2 years. I haven't had really like noticeable cramps in over a year. So it took probably like a year from when I knew about it, but like a few months of like real committed implementation of resting on my period, of eating anti-inflammatory was important for me in the beginning, but it got less important later on, which I can talk about later. So those things were really important. Magnesium, I recommend to anyone. So that's another add-on. But to me, the resting and the slowing down before your period, like the whole 2 weeks before, basically you're preparing to bleed. That was really a game changer. So when I did that, it took 3 months. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So about 3 months from when you actually seriously started resting in the 2 weeks before your period.
Yeah. Oh, and eating enough. Eating enough is so important. Eating
Really?
enough, like complex carbs, eating enough food, like really nourishing your body, that makes a huge difference.
Let's dive into some of those other dietary things that you implemented as well, because that sounds fascinating to me too.
There's kind of 3 levels that I like to talk about. To anyone listening, don't get overwhelmed because I don't even follow this strictly. It's more if you are in a state of like emergency with your cycle, then you can follow it strictly. The first level is kind of like warm versus cold food. So your body, your digestive system changes throughout the cycle. So I would prioritize warm cooked food in the second half of my cycle, so late luteal and my menstruation, because digestion is low and it can't process all of those super raw, crunchy veggies, which can cause bloating and make everything worse. So that's one piece of it. The second layer is macronutrients. So that's like what combination of carbs, protein, and fats are you eating? And in the luteal phase, it's really important to have a lot of complex carbs. You also are burning, as a woman, like 300 extra calories a day in your luteal phase because of your metabolism due to progesterone. So it's super important that you actually eat more. And that's why I think, including myself, oh my God, a lot of women fall into this trap of trying to eat how they normally do, and then they just binge because they're like so hungry. And then they just grab that like pizza or chocolate or fries or whatever. So eating enough bigger portions, and like complex carbs like potatoes and quinoa and rice, and you know more volume, I guess, in that part of your phase. Yeah.
Fascinating. There's so much here I'm hearing for the first time, and it's so
Oh,
interesting. Can you explain a little bit more? What are the names of the different phases and how do they align to when you actually get your period? Because all I know is 30 days and I get my period. Like that's
okay,
basically all I
yes.
know. And then
Amazing.
it would be super cool to hear what you eat or what you would recommend people to eat in those different phases.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yes. Let's do it. So basically, day one of your cycle is the first day of your full bleed. Not when you're like spotting, if you spot before, but day one's the first day of your full bleed, and that's the first day of your menstrual phase. So your menstrual phase is when you are bleeding, basically. And your menstrual phase is also a part of the follicular phase. That's what's a little bit confusing. So day one of your menstrual phase is also day one of your follicular phase. When you
Okay.
stop bleeding, the follicular phase continues until you ovulate. Ovulation is just one day where your egg gets released. And then after you ovulate, you're in your luteal phase. And then your luteal phase lasts until you get your next period. I like to split it up a little more evenly, just energetically. So you have like 3 to 5 days for your period, you have like 6 to 8 days for your luteal phase, and then like 5 days around ovulation where you feel sexy and bubbly and you can eat lots of smoothies and healthy fats and stuff. And then you move into the luteal phase, which is the longest phase. Unfortunately, say some women, although I think the luteal phase has a lot of potential, but it also is the place where most women get PMS, mood swings, breast tenderness, all that stuff. So that's kind of the overview of the cycle. Yeah.
Fascinating, fascinating. So when you were kind of starting to mention in the, I'm not going to get the names right here, but the phase right before you ovulate, in
Hmm.
that phase, you were saying you can kind of eat lighter or, smoothies and raw foods. And then after that phase, you're saying to kind of shift into a more like warm foods diet.
Yeah, so Alexandra Pope, she's amazing. She co-wrote Wild Power, and co-founded the Red School. She created this metaphor called the inner seasons, and it also happens to apply to the way you should eat. So your menstruation is inner winter. So if you think about what foods you eat then, it's like really warm, cozy, easy to digest. It's soups, it's stews. And then you move into inner spring, the follicular phase, right before or pre-ovulation, I can say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's where you start introducing more of these fruits, and I like to say fresh and colorful is what you want to prioritize there, as well as fermented foods are really beneficial there as well, and all other grains, like lighter grains like rice and wheat and stuff. And then when you move into ovulation, you want to support ovulation. You want to support fertility, even if you're not trying to get pregnant. That's one of the most important things I say. Everyone should eat like they're trying to get pregnant, even if they're not. So you want to eat everything to support the egg. So zinc is really important, and healthy fats, and then lots of antioxidants. So you can find those in all the berries, and like vitamin E, vitamin C, vitamin A. Those are really important. And then you move into inner autumn, the luteal phase, and that's where you eat more bulky foods like the root vegetables. And so that's kind of the overview.
That's
Yeah.
so like intuitive and just makes sense. That's brilliant. I
Yeah.
love that.
Great.
When you started implementing a diet like this, combined with, let's say, resting in your luteal phase, when you actually dedicatedly followed this method for about 3-ish months, you
Hmm.
started to notice a difference in your symptoms?
Yeah, and I would say the biggest shift was when I went off these low carb diets and started to eat more bulk and more complex carbs in the second half of my cycle, because when I was on these low carb diets, I was getting enough veggies and nutrients and antioxidants and all that, but what wasn't being supported was progesterone. And progesterone is like the cozy hormone. For it to be able to be produced, you have to eat complex carbs, and you have to like relax, literally. Like your nervous system has to be calm. Otherwise, it literally gets converted into cortisol in your body. So those two things really help everything. Progesterone is your best friend. You want
Wow.
progesterone.
Progesterone gets converted into cortisol if you are not eating properly?
Yes, if you are in a state of fight or flight, like basically your body is like, what's more important, having a baby or surviving? It's like surviving is more important. So it just converts it, and it can lead to a lot of problems. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So when you think about how busy everyone is and the stress that we are all under all the time, combined with the popularity of these low carb diets and high protein diets, it's no wonder that so many women experience bad menstrual cramps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's really sad.
It is. It's sad,
Yeah.
right? And when you're working with other women, does it resonate with them when you explain these things? Or have you met with any type of resistance or questioning or people struggling to actually implement that or see results?
Yeah, I think I mean, it sounds great, this kind of cyclical eating, but it is quite a hump to get over to start doing it, because a month comes around quick. And if you're trying to meal prep, or if you're trying to go grocery shopping and you're like, oh, what was it in this phase I was supposed to eat? So
Yeah.
I usually don't introduce that until later in time when I'm working with women. What I work on first and foremost is like lifestyle. So what are they doing during their period, during the days leading up to it, and how do they feel towards their period and towards their pain? Because that's another big thing that I see, is that women are so fearful. Like they're like, oh, preparing the whole month for their period to come, and they're like, my cramps, they're going to be so bad. How bad are they going to be? What's going to happen? Um and just trying to allow them to meet that time. And I find that the acceptance and the lowering of the fear comes first, and then the resolution of the symptoms come later.
Wow.
So Yeah, but definitely this is very hard to live cyclically. And sometimes, sometimes women just decide, I am not ready to do this. My life is not at a place to do this yet. I'm going to go on birth control, or I'm going to take ibuprofen every month because this is just not where I can put my energy. And that is totally a respectable decision as well. I just think women should be informed about all of their options.
Absolutely. And I wanted to dive back quickly into a little bit more on the diet side because I had a follow-up question there.
Hmm.
So I think I saw one video where you were talking about ginger, and I'm
Yeah.
curious about ginger or other specific herbs or supplements that you may know of that could be beneficial to take, and in which part of your cycle that you would recommend taking them.
Yeah. Okay, ginger is amazing. Ginger is amazing for nausea and pain. It's incredibly effective, like incredibly effective for pain. And you don't have to taste it. I know some people don't like ginger. You can get capsules. I don't remember exactly the dose, but there was a study that proved it was basically as effective as some of these like ibuprofen or painkillers because it reduces inflammation and it's really amazing with pain. The only thing is if you have lower blood pressure, you have to be careful because it can be a blood thinner. So just make sure you're not taking really high doses with any other kind of blood thinning medication or anything. But it's really
Hmm.
amazing for pain and nausea. Other herbs, raspberry leaf tea is really amazing for cramps. Cramp bark, named for its magic, is also amazing for cramps. I recommend taking those starting before you get the cramps. So if you know you start getting cramps 2 days before your period, start, drinking the teas 5 or 6 days before you get your period. For bloating in Ayurveda, they have this amazing tea called CCFT. It's cumin, coriander, and fennel. Mix those together. Really effective for bloating. Add ginger, it's even better. I've used that a lot when I used to have digestive issues. That can be helpful for bloating, which can help cramps because cramps and bloating really can make each other a lot worse. Constipation as well, that can help. Omega-3 and magnesium are like the two that I recommend for cramps. So omega-3 is an anti-inflammatory. So you don't want too much omega-6 because that's an inflammatory. So you want more omega-3. And inflammation is very important when you're talking about cramps. So you want the omega-3s. So that can be in fatty fish or you can take capsules. Sardines are an amazing source though, so you don't even have to buy the capsules. You can just eat sardines before your period.
Tell that to a lot of women, they'll be like, oh,
I know.
I'll take the capsule.
Exactly. No, it's so true. Yeah. It's or salmon. Salmon's good too.
So funny.
Yeah. And then B6 is also, see, for me, it's hard to just talk about cramps because to me, cramps is a symptom of the entire cycle being disrupted. So vitamin B6 is also really amazing. It helps progesterone levels. So if you might be estrogen dominant, it's a good idea to take vitamin B6. It can help with all issues related to low progesterone, like mood swings and sort of breast tenderness and all that stuff. So yeah, I'll just recap. For cramps, we have ginger, red raspberry leaf, and cramp bark. Then we have the CCFT for bloating, magnesium and omega-3, and then vitamin B6. Yeah.
Brilliant. Gosh, that is so much useful information. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
And, as a follow-up to that, do you still implement all of these in your life regularly, or after you kind of saw a diminishing of your cramps, maybe you still do some of it, but not as much? What's your experience there?
Yeah, good question. The best thing that I've gotten away from all of this knowledge is the menstrual cycle awareness. So my main practice that I'm really committed to more than any supplements or diet or anything is my daily cycle check-ins. So every day, just in the notes app on my phone, I just write down the day of my cycle and how I'm feeling, just in like 3 words or like a couple sentences. And that kind of helps me track over time what's going on. So I adjust accordingly, basically. So now I'm not at a point where I need to be taking supplements all the time. But I noticed a couple months ago that my luteal phase was quite short. and that can be a sign of low progesterone. So then I started taking B6, and now it's pretty much back to normal. So now that I know what a normal cycle looks like for me and what an abnormal cycle looks like, and then I have these little tips and tricks to use when I need, I can kind of adjust accordingly. But I do not take, I barely take any supplements now, and I don't take anything for cramps or pain. I use hot water bottles because it feels really good. So yeah, I don't take any ginger. I also drink herbal teas all the time, which I'm sure help, but I don't rely on them religiously, just for pleasure.
Do you drink caffeine, or do you recommend avoiding caffeine during, let's say, the time when you're getting cramps or any other time?
Yeah, good question. I was just talking to a client about this because she's like really obsessed with caffeine or coffee. It's like first thing in the morning. Yeah, and I'm not against coffee at all. I just think for me, it's like there's some important things about caffeine. It can't be a crutch, and it can't be something that you're relying on to go to the bathroom. That's a big one. I'm like, you need to wake up and eat, go to the bathroom, and then you can have your coffee because otherwise it can become, yeah, kind of like a dependency. And then if you're sleeping worse, that means you need less caffeine. And I know that's hard because you sleep bad and then you wake up and you're tired and you want your coffee. But for me, I'm like, if I wake up really well rested, I'm like, yes, I get to have my matcha today, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm a matcha girl over coffee just because I think it's like less harsh on the digestion. But if you drink coffee and it's okay for you and you can go to the bathroom without it and you can sleep through the night, then I think it's all good. I personally like cut out everything harsh for my system like the day before my period and 3 days in. Just like all alcohol and caffeine. That just feels really good for my body. Yeah, it's all about listening to your body. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And on listening to your body, you had mentioned earlier around the importance of the mental health component. Like, let's say if you have fear leading up to your cycle or other stressors in your life, maybe even not just about your cycle, what do you recommend, or what have you experienced that's been important to work through that had like a direct impact on your cramps?
Yeah, well, for me, it was very much related to this allowing myself to rest. So that was really what my cramps were doing for me, like if you can say that. They were forcing me to rest or to take a pause. I think for other women who have really persistent, chronic, debilitating cramps, it can be connected to suppressed emotions, I guess. I'm learning more and more about this recently. I know we talked about it briefly before, but I've gotten into Dr. Sarno and Nicole Sachs and their theories of like mind-body connections and disorders, and how crucial it is to be able to bring to the surface what has been suppressed. I had a lot of issues with that, more with the eczema than with the cramps. For some reason, the cramps were easier for me, maybe because it was connected to my femininity or something. Like I felt so aligned with being a woman, and it just made sense. With the eczema, it was much more shameful for me. So I had a lot of experience with that, with the suppression of emotions. But when I'm working with my clients, I see it's totally the same for cramps as well. Like these feelings, these boundaries that you're not setting, it's like your body's setting them for you.
Fascinating. That's really fascinating. So maybe on that note, let's dive into some of the other conditions that you've experienced with relation to anxiety. Can you describe a little bit what were your symptoms like, and maybe how severe or how long you experienced that, and then what you started to do to work through that?
Yeah. So I'll just say this first as like a framing of the story because it's kind of a joke I say to my friends, but I say like my mental problems were actually physical and my physical problems were actually mental. So what ended up resolving my anxiety was like working with my diet, whereas my physical issues did not resolve working with my diet. So
It's
anyway,
a
but I'll,
joke, but it's
yeah,
not. It's like
no,
I experienced that. I know other people have experienced that. It's such an
yeah,
insane phenomenon that needs to be talked about more. So I love to hear that. Tell me more.
yeah, yeah. Well, okay, so I mean, my anxiety started way, way back. I mean, I was always kind of a sensitive kid, but when I was 8 years old, I had this experience that kind of triggered. It wasn't really bad. It was just I was with this friend and he got up and he went to the stairs and he like threw up everywhere. And then for some reason that created a phobia, like a really bad phobia of throw up. And that kind of took over my life for from when I was like 8 to 11, 12, like in a really serious way. Like I didn't want to leave the house. I was having panic attacks all the time. My parents took me to like psychics and hypnotics and like all sorts of things because I was really, it was pretty debilitating. So that was kind of the start of like the really intense anxiety. And then it just kind of took shape and manifested in different ways. And then it kind of got better throughout high school. I think I was like too peer pressured to let it take up space. I don't know. I just wanted to be cool. So I was like, I can't be anxious. That's weird.
Yeah.
But then it kind of came back in full force when I moved to Denmark. And well, that's not totally true, actually. It was there. I had a very intense high school relationship that was very on and off and dysregulating to my nervous system. So it would also come up there. And my anxiety was always about bodily issues. So even if my real life was falling apart, I wouldn't be anxious about that. I would think that I had a disease or I would make up something that was seriously wrong with my body. So that's kind of always how it manifested. And it wasn't until I want to say the past like 2 years that I realized that that health anxiety would come up because other things were happening in my life. That's how my body chose to manifest it. So,
Interesting.
yeah, 2.5 years ago in the winter, I had like the worst winter of my life. I had like I convinced myself I had breast cancer. Basically, I had like hours of panic attacks. It was the worst my anxiety has ever been. Like I really thought I was gonna die. Like I was
Oh my
convinced. I hadn't.
God.
There was nothing wrong with me. I didn't even have a lump. I don't know where it came from. I just really, really went down a rabbit hole. And then from then on, my health, everything about my health kind of declined. My skin, my stomach, everything. That was like kind of aligned. Um,
And when you're saying you had like these long panic attacks, you were just really anxious during that time period and you couldn't stop, let's say, thinking about the thing that you're worried about. Is that kind of what it was like?
yeah, I mean I was very familiar with panic attacks. I had had them since I was a kid. Um, Especially around throw up. Like if anyone threw up in front of me, I would have a panic attack and then I would go remove myself and I would calm down.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that lasted, I mean, through my whole life. That would probably happen. I mean, it probably wouldn't happen now. I think I'm past that. But yeah, around the throw up, that's really the worst one. But when I was having these panic attacks, it was like the first time in my adult life I lost control. Like my logical brain was gone and I was just like hyperventilating and crying and saying to my boyfriend like, no, you don't understand, like I'm dying, I have this disease, like, and I was like, I know I'm crazy, but I also know that I'm gonna die. It was so bad.
Oh
It was
my
so bad.
gosh.
I've never experienced that before. And then I discovered hypochondria and what that means and how you can actually create symptoms from your mind and from your anxiety. But it took me a long time to accept that that's what was going on because I also had physical symptoms. Like I had eczema all over my body. So when someone would say, but you're creating it with your mind, I'm like, but look, I'm covered in a rash. I'm not creating that with my mind, you know? So that was really hard to kind of like swallow both of these things at once.
Oh my gosh. I really empathize with you, and especially having had anxiety attacks at such a young age. Can you describe a little bit what that felt like? Because I think some people don't necessarily know what an anxiety attack feels like, where you're saying that your rational mind kind of is not there.
Yeah, it's a very physical experience. I would get like rushes, like these kind of tingling rushes through my body. My heart would beat fast, and for me, because the fear was throw up, I would be convinced that I was about to throw up. Like I would get nauseous and I would feel like I was gonna gag. But I think for different people, they can manifest different symptoms. Like a lot of people, I think, feel like they're gonna die. Like they are convinced they're gonna die in that moment. I've never felt that. It's always throw up for me. I don't know why. It's just my karma, I guess. Um, but you feel like the worst thing in the world is going to happen to you right now, and there's no one that can convince you differently. Like you are not in your rational mind. Like, and there have been moments when I was really in that space where I was like, I was so afraid of throwing up that I would rather die. Like I would say this, like I would rather die than throw up, and I know that's ridiculous. Like my logical mind is like that is ridiculous, but my whole body is telling me that that is the worst thing in the world that can happen. And I know people who have, social anxiety, they're like, I would rather die than my, boyfriend leave me or whatever it is. So that it's like the same kind of like, like the world is crumbling around you and you can't get any perspective.
Oh my gosh. That is so intense and difficult to deal with and work through, especially at a young age and all through school. You started to say something about how your diet ended up helping, or did you try anything else, let's say first for anxiety that was maybe not working or not necessarily a natural solution? And then what actually ended up working and how did you figure that out?
Yeah, so let me just preface this by saying I'm not 100% sure. I don't have proof that the diet I was on fixed the anxiety. I just have like such a deep intuitive feeling that that's what happened. But I mean, I tried everything to manage the anxiety. I didn't think it was something I could ever get rid of fully. But me and my mom, we did like tapping. I don't know if any of you know this kind of tapping, but we did that a lot when I was a kid. That helped me. Also, grounding doesn't help me when I'm in a panic attack, like deep breathing, but like shaking, moving my body, those things help. Yeah, I tried all sorts of videos and stuff. But I think what happened was like I entered into this really intense healing period where I ended up stopping basically my whole life because my health on so many different levels was falling apart. Like my skin, my stomach, my menstrual cycle and my anxiety were all just, it was compounding and it was really bad like 3 years ago. And then it kind of led up until a year ago. I've been on so many diets. I cannot even tell you how many diets I've tried. The one I was on, I think during this time was like some kind of form of a gut healing diet, but not one that you would know about. It was like low fiber. Maybe it was like low FODMAP, low fiber. But I think something happened where I was taking mega IgG, which is like a non-meat colostrum, which helps like repair the lining of the gut. And I was taking probiotics, Saccharomyces boulardii, I think, to really help repair my gut. And over time, I felt like there was a demon inside of me that was going away. Like that, because the anxiety that I experienced during that winter when I convinced myself I had breast cancer was not like the anxiety I had as a kid. It felt like another thing was inside of me and it was coming like from my cells. I don't know how else to describe it. And so as I started to heal my gut, I just felt that I had a higher tolerance. I don't know how else to describe it. Like I would get these waves of anxiety, but they would pass and then slowly they didn't come as often. And it was also, so it was the diet, but it was also nervous system regulation. Like I had less to do in my day to day. That helped. But yeah, I just have such a strong feeling that it was my gut repairing that kind of, it took the edge off, I should say. And then everything I did after was like upkeep. Yeah.
Wow. And there's so much research these days and research going on about the importance of gut health
Hmm.
impacting mental health and other physical health. It's no surprise, honestly. And it's interesting because you are very in tune with your body and, understanding how you're feeling and paying attention to that. It seems like you were almost aware of this feeling kind of fading in association with your gut health. That is fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so let's say since you started that gut healing diet, how long did it take approximately till you started to feel this release of some of that anxiety?
Yeah, that one I think I'm more clear about. I think it was about, so from when I started individually working on it, it was longer. It was like a year. But when I started working with this coach who was really helping me specifically with my gut health, that it took 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a few things already that you took some supplements and probiotics. Was there anything or what were you eating generally for food at that time?
So all whole foods. I mean, only whole organic foods. Meat. I was vegan for a long time and vegetarian and then pescatarian, and then because of all my health stuff, I decided to start eating meat. So I was eating meat and vegetables basically. That was basically it. Like no grains, no beans, which honestly, I don't like. I think I could have made the same progress with my health looking back on a much less strict diet. I think the detriment of that diet was not, I mean, it was worth it because it helped me in some ways, but I think it also hurt me in a lot of other ways. So I think I could have gotten to that point of healing my gut with a less strict diet.
So, what did you add back or change since then that you would recommend going forward that you maybe wished you had done at that time or that you think is maybe the best way to go forward now?
Okay, you're catching me in like a very transformative moment. So
Great.
I'm gonna answer from how I am like right now because it's
Yes.
different than how I was like a month ago.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but I think I used to put a lot of emphasis on diet, like all the emphasis on diet. And now I've kind of shifted to putting almost all of the emphasis on my emotional like inner world and my nervous system. And for me, I think that's true because there were times when I was on these strict diets and my health had never been worse. Like when I was on the candida diet, for example, I had the worst eczema breakout of my entire life. My period was like super messed up. And this was after I had all this health awareness. And my anxiety was already better, which is why I think the anxiety actually got better from the diet, but everything else fell apart.
And what is the Candida diet?
The candida diet it is like meat and non-starchy vegetables. So it was like I was eating chicken, like lettuce, broccoli, like cruciferous veggies, cucumber, like
So super
very
low
like
carb.
super like no carb. I was eating like at some points like less than 50 grams of carbs a day coming from just like non-starchy vegetables.
And your health
So
was the worst it's been.
it was the worst it has ever been. I broke out and then and then I would have these mystery moments where I would eat that diet and my health would be the worst it's ever been. And then I would go visit my mom in Santa Fe and I would be on the exact same diet and my skin would completely clear. Then I would come back to living in Copenhagen and my skin would erupt again, an eczema. I was on the same diet, so I was like, is it the weather? Like what is happening? And really I think it was really my emotional state, which is why now I am eating like everything. I mean, it's crazy. I never thought I would eat the things I'm eating now. I'm eating bread and dairy and all these really, really scary foods that I thought I would never ever eat again. Because for me, it came to a point where healing my relationship with food was much more important for my health than eating a restrictive diet. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about what that means to you, your relationship with food? Because I've also heard this before from other people, that when you're trying so hard to do the right thing and eat the right thing, that you become almost fearful of certain foods and what it can do to you. But maybe that's partly in your head. It's not even always very clear. So I would just love to hear kind of what you've gone through with that.
Yeah. Oh my God. I have had such a journey with food. It's really been like the main thing that I've kind of worked with to heal myself up until this point. The other day, I wrote a list of all the foods that I have been told by someone or another to avoid. And what I was left with was peeled cucumber. That is the only food that not any one person has told me not to eat.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
yeah, and I think that's what can happen. That's kind of the shadow side of the holistic healing world. That, first of all, there's so many different opinions, and there's so many people who are just so sure of themselves, like
Yes.
carnivore diet, no, raw vegan diet,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
and I mean, I was told also with 100% clarity I had a parasite, I had candida, all of these different things.
Yes. And people will report complete symptom remission on one diet, like carnivore diet, and the same symptom remission on a vegan diet. So like, how can they
Exactly.
both be true? And that's where, I mean, that is the essence of why I have this podcast, is because everyone's story is so different. We don't know a lot of these things for sure, and it can change over time. It's a really fascinating topic, and so many people struggle with it so much.
Totally. I think what happened for me that was really dangerous for me personally was that I was giving away my authority to other people because I was so desperate. And I'm sure like everyone listening to this can relate. If you've had a chronic health issue, like you are so desperate for someone to tell you the answer. Like,
Yes.
I cannot tell you, I would have paid, I did pay. I paid so much money to different people to tell me the answer.
Yes.
And then every time it was not working, I would find an explanation to tell myself, no, but it's just because you're doing it wrong, or it's just because of this thing that's wrong with you, or whatever it is, to try to explain why the thing wasn't working. And then I would just end up being so deflated and turning to a new expert, to give me a new answer and trying something else. And it's funny because the whole time I had this feeling like one day after none of this works, I'm just gonna like eat a cake, like that, and that's gonna be how I heal. I just had this feeling, that I was just gonna like eat something that's so insane and crazy, and that's how I'm gonna heal. And
so
really,
funny.
that is literally what happened. I mean, almost literally. Like I went to this woman who told me that basically these diets I'd been on weren't good for me. I didn't need to eat that restrictive. I got so upset because I was like, are you kidding me? I've been on these strict diets. You're telling me they've done nothing? But then I started eating. Like that night I went home, I ate 3 foods that I was so terrified of, which are super healthy foods: dates, avocados, and feta cheese. I was like, these were my top fear foods because of histamines and sugar and dairy and whatever. And I was completely fine. And it was like this moment of like,
Yeah.
wait, what?
Yeah.
It's like pure rage, but also pure like exhilaration.
Yep.
So you're like, I thought
love
this
it.
would kill me,
Yep. Yep.
I also go back and I think about all of the times that I was convinced, like, I was working with this coach. She was amazing. Like, I don't want to say anything bad about her. I think she just was applying her dietary, what helped her onto me. But she would, I would be like, I'm having a really huge flare and I feel like I've been eating perfectly. And she's like, okay, well, let's go through what you've eaten. And I would be like, okay, well, I guess like 3 days ago, I ate something with, like, I ate coconut yogurt and I guess that's fermented. And she'd be like, yep, that's it. That's the thing. I'd be like, okay, another food that I can't eat, rather than thinking, okay, if I'm eating so perfectly, why is this still happening? Maybe it's not the food, that didn't occur to me.
Yes.
And then my diet just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And like when I would have these um times where something difficult in my life would be happening, like actually like during this whole eczema thing, I had an abortion, and after I had the abortion, that week after, I was like, I'm just going to eat what the hell I want because I
Yeah.
want to take care of myself. So I had pizza, I had, ice cream and whatever, and nothing happened, but I felt so guilty about it that I immediately went on a strict diet after. And then I was like, oh, that's why nothing happened, because I went on a strict diet after. So
Yep.
everything was going through this paradigm.
Yep. And that's the paradox of these natural solutions is we don't know what exactly works. So we're constantly trying to figure out what did we do or not do or what are the factors. And we're trying to like self-observe ourselves. And there is inherent bias in that. But at the same time, there's no other way to do it. There is no other way, which is why like ultimately I think and hope that if we collect a lot of these stories, we can hopefully pull out some of the similarities and differences and maybe get to a place where people don't have to spend their whole lives suffering and experimenting to actually figure out. Because maybe there is an interplay between certain diets and certain mental health. Maybe it's different for different people. Like how for me, eczema was mainly around mental health, and for my baby, it was all around diet. So where
Yeah.
have you gotten thus far now that you're working through like your relationship with food? What does your diet look like right now? I know you talked a lot about the importance of carbohydrates for your menstrual cycle, and how did that kind of play into you maybe shifting your diet back as well?
Yeah, so my diet's insane right now because I am doing this thing. I'm calling it to my friends because they've seen me go on so many diets. I'm like, I'm on the anti-diet diet right now
I love it.
because
I love
I
it.
am, yeah, I'm like fully committing to Dr. Sarno and his way of looking at the mind body, and I'm rage journaling every day. I'm looking at my, repressed emotions. I'm trying to set more boundaries. So I'm fully committing to that. And what he also talks about, and most of his stuff is about pain, like back pain or different parts. You know him, right? Yeah. Yeah,
Yes,
you said,
exactly.
yeah.
My
Yeah.
husband had a experience with back pain, which is in the third episode of this podcast, actually. Really impactful book and impactful way of thinking. Just
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. My mom also healed through him from back pain, like severe, severe back pain. Um, yeah, so I'm fully committing to it, and one of the things he says is that you have to stop all treatment because when you treat, then you're still convincing your body that there's something physically wrong with it. It's like in the same kind of paradigm. And so for me, the treatment was the diets. The treatment was the fear of food. So I said, I was like, I've tried everything. I have tried everything. So I might as well do something that's actually going to bring me joy.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
so right now I'm in a process of eating eating every food like that I've been the most terrified of. Which means my diet does not look like how I would recommend my clients to eat. But it's exactly right for me. So I am eating intuitively, and I'm also pushing myself out of my comfort zones. Like, for example, I'm no longer meal prepping, which I will get back into eventually, probably, because I love eating healthy, but I'm trying to have a more casual relationship with food. Like, oh, what's in the fridge? What can I whip up right now? I
Mm-hmm.
don't care that it's been in the fridge for 2 days. That's not going to kill me, like,
Yes, yes,
it's not
yes.
going the histamines aren't going to give me a breakout or
Yes,
whatever.
yes, yes.
Um, so that's one thing. I'm eating, like, I had a glass of wine. I actually had multiple glasses of wine with my friends the other night. I
Love
had
it.
a fantastic time. I'm also experiencing for the first time like feeling the discomfort of a normal person after you eat something unhealthy. Like I shared this like ridiculous like cupcake with my dad the other night, and I was like, ooh, like that didn't feel great, but I know that it's not because I'm allergic to it. It's just because I ate a freaking cupcake, you know? I was
And like it's
like,
not going to kill you. Like you'll just
right, it's not going to
get
kill me.
over
I'm
it.
not going to have a 5-day flare because of it. It's not going to send me into a like spiral of self-hatred and anxiety,
Yeah.
which it totally would have. So that's what I'm doing right now, and my skin has not been better for like the last 2 years. Like literally the more I commit to this practice of rage journaling and of just being kind with myself about the food that I'm eating, my skin just continues to improve,
Oh
which
my
is so
gosh.
insane.
That is so exciting. And I can
Yeah.
relate to that so much because for me, it was around mental health and the restrictions or fears I had that were subconscious for me that were playing out every day, even though I didn't even realize it, and self-doubt, self-deprecation, and living like imposter syndrome and all these things. And when you work through them, when you surface those emotions and realize what they are and let them go, that had a huge impact on my eczema. So it's like not the day-to-day stress, it's the internal underlying stress. And it sounds like from what you're describing, that can even happen from your relationship with food that can cause stress. So it could be really anything out there that can cause this level of stress that can potentially trigger eczema. So we haven't
Definitely.
we haven't talked too much about let's say eczema for you from the beginning. What you've experienced with eczema over time, let's say when it started, maybe how it's evolved and kind of interplayed between these other conditions that you've described as well.
Definitely. I'll say the thing that I would be looking for if I was listening to this or watching this, which is that don't worry, my eczema was as bad as yours, if not worse, like to anyone listening, because I would always watch things or listen and be like, oh, but they didn't have as bad eczema, so I can't compare myself to them. Like, don't worry, I've healed like the worst eczema ever. And I've had it since I was a kid. I had it like kind of a bad flare when I was like 3, and then it kind of got better throughout my life, but it was on and off. You know, I'd get little patches, but nothing severe. And then 4 years ago, I went to this school, this like adult camp, I like to call it, where basically we just like partied and I ate crap and I got sick basically the entire time. Like I got colds and flus like one after another because we were just all living together and yeah. So that definitely messed something up inside of me. It was also a really emotional time. My parents got divorced. So there was lots happening like within that 6 months. And then after that, the eczema came back with force, I should say. Um, and I couldn't kick it after that. So that's when I started trying to get into these alternative health stuff. And then I would say a year ago, I got really serious about it because my eczema just kept getting worse, even though I thought I was doing everything right. And then when I started these diets, actually, that's when the eczema really, really got bad. And there was a point where I had literally no part of my body that was not covered in eczema. It
Oh
was
my
insane, and it was
gosh.
like unexplainable. Like I was in Santa Fe. I mean, my eczema got worse and better, but when I was in Santa Fe, it was gone. It would just disappear out of the blue in within a week, and then I would come back to Copenhagen, and it would come back so hard and so fast. And the second time I came back to Copenhagen from being in Santa Fe, where I had no eczema, within a week, it was covering. I mean, I kid you not, from like my ankles to the top of my head. Like it was so uncomfortable. My whole back, my all of my arms, my chest, my stomach. It was so bad, so uncomfortable. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't like think. I couldn't wear clothes. You know, it was like it was so bad.
I am so sorry to hear that. It is horrible. It really is.
It's really horrible. Yeah. So that's where I'm coming from, and actually it was since then, like since the worst of it, like that was in December that it was like that. So it's really only been like since December that I've gone from having like the worst it's ever been to being almost cleared of eczema at this
Oh
point.
my gosh. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
you look amazing. You wouldn't be able to tell
Thank
today.
you.
I'm so happy for you. So
Yeah,
do you
thank
feel that it's mainly been two questions here? Around diet, you said the diet that you were doing at one point that was primarily meat and vegetables, your eczema was like the worst it's ever been, although with a pause in Santa Fe. And then, since then, how have you, let's say, well, I know you said now you're kind of eating anything, but when you came out of that diet, I know you were also talking about more carbohydrates, let's say
Mm-hmm.
for your menstrual cycle. So did you add back things like, let's say, potatoes or other maybe healthy carbohydrates? First on the diet piece, and then we'll talk about the mental health component as well.
Yeah. So I think overall, the diets that I did that didn't weren't detrimental to me were good. They just didn't matter for the eczema piece. I'm
Got it.
sure they were good for my overall health. I've also gotten like a million labs and stuff done, and I'm very like a healthy person because I've been working on my health for so long. It just wasn't helping the eczema. So when I started adding more carbs in, a big thing that helped was just adding plant proteins back. So I now I eat everything. I eat meat and I eat plant proteins. So I added beans and grains and tofu and all those different things. Which also I was afraid of soy for so long. Now as a menstrual coach, I'm like, why was I afraid of soy? You know, like that. Anyway, but yeah, so I added all of those foods back in, which was also nice because I could have like stews, you know, and curries, which is so nice and nourishing for the menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
So that's what I was doing for a while. That was like the beginning of when I started to get better, was when I started to reintroduce those plant proteins and grains.
And then around the, let's say, fear and mental health and working through emotions, what have you done? Can you talk a little bit about what you said, like rage journaling and things like that? What are the techniques that you've used to try to surface emotions? Because that's such a hard thing to understand how to do. It's like learning how to meditate for the first time. You're like, what even is it? I can't comprehend what it is. So I'm just curious the methods you've used and what you feel has been helpful for you.
Yeah. So I think it came into my life right when I was ready. If someone had told me before, I'm sure my mom even did because she had healed from Dr. Sarno years and years ago. But I'm sure she could sense I wasn't ready or something. But I think she just sent me a podcast or something like randomly, and I started listening. And there was something about the way he talked about it that was so validating because I think I've heard a lot that like my coach that I worked with, for example, she said, this is probably 50% stress. And to me, that was incredibly stressful because I was like, how am I supposed to reduce my stress with these crazy diets and me not having any work or doing anything with my life? Whereas Dr. Sarna was like, it's not about stress. It's not about like the day-to-day stressors. It's about what you are not allowing to come forward. And to me, I was like, that is me. Like that applies to me perfectly. And he went through this list of characteristics that this kind of mind body syndrome like happens to. And he was like, perfectionist, the goodest, he talks about, like people who just try to be good all the time and try to be liked and do everything in well. And I'm like, oh God, that is like calling me out to a T. So then I started I got really, really immediate confirmation as well that that's what was happening because I started to go back in my head and return to these severe flares that I had and look at them through a emotional lens rather than a food lens, which is what I had been doing. And I was like, that makes so much more sense. Like one of the worst flares I had blamed on a chicken breast with a little bit too much black pepper. That's why I thought the flare happened. My eyes were swollen shut. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then I looked back and I was like, oh, actually, I had a really bad fight with my mom and I didn't feel like I was allowed to be separate from my mom at that time. I was very I didn't want to feel that we were different at all. But in that moment, I could feel that we were different and that was really forbidden to me. And then I had this huge flare. So that was one example of where I was like, oh, obviously, And then I went through almost every flare. I was like, okay, I can track this down. It's a science, every single time something happened where, I was like pushing a truth down.
Yes.
Yeah.
The repressed emotions. That's what Dr. Sarno talks about. And I mean, more than just for back pain, because that's mainly his focus, but it applies to every aspect of our lives. This suppression of what we truly feel or think, or emotions or past events that we haven't fully mourned or grieved or let ourselves feel, they all just get repressed and really has an impact on our health, I think.
Totally. Sorry, I didn't talk about what I'm doing. So I'm really trying to follow Nicole Sax's like journal speak. It's very clear. On YouTube, she has like 3 or 4 super clear like videos about how to do it. And basically you make 3 lists. One about childhood stressors, like everything that's a stressor. It doesn't even have to be a negative stressor. It could be like moving to a new place or, then like parents' divorce or neglect or whatever you had going on. And then there's everyday stressors. So that's like anything that puts a little bit of stress on you. And that's also good things. So like I have a lovely boyfriend, love him so much, but that is a stressor because being in a relationship is hard sometimes. Or like being in school, having a job, and then there's personality. So like you write down the parts of your personality that make it a little bit more difficult for you to live in the world, I guess. So like perfectionism or being a goodist or codependency or whatever you have going on in your inner world, a loud inner critic. And then basically how she says it is you like go through and you pick one for the day and you write about it for 20 minutes every day. And of course you pick one, but then you end up talking about something completely different and you go all over the place. But that's what I've been doing. I've been trying to be consistent, although I do meet a lot of resistance, which she talks about a lot. Like I'll be like, I don't really have to do it today. And then I'm like, oh, I should definitely do it today. Yeah.
I'm curious, have you experienced where you tap into an emotion or maybe a situation or something happens and it triggers like a bigger response than you would maybe expect from yourself? And have you tried, like, let's say, working through, like asking yourself maybe, why am I feeling that, and seeing where it comes from and digging into repressed emotions? Because it's something I've been trying to work on recently, and I just think it's like a whole new world. It's pretty powerful to like try that. I'm curious if you've ever tried something like that as part of this.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yes. I think that I did not. Okay, my parents got divorced when I was 19, and I immediately kind of jumped into this observant role. Like, wow, this is so fascinating. My parents have a completely different dynamic than they've ever had before. And I also like totally merged with my mom and felt really sad for her. And there was a lot of ways where I didn't really allow myself to grieve. Like my parents had a super happy, loving relationship for like 25 years. And then all of a sudden they were divorced. It was like there was no warning, nothing. So I think at that time I couldn't really go there. And so literally just in the past like 3 weeks, I was doing one of these meditations with the app Curable, which is an amazing app. I'd put that in there. And I was doing one of these meditations. I was super naive going into it. I was like, oh, one of these like identify your emotions. Okay, that's cool. And it kept being like, okay, go under that sadness. What's under that sadness? Okay, go under that anger. What's underneath the anger? And I was like, all of a sudden, it was like I was overcome with this deep sense of fear from my inner child that I was completely alone in the world, because now I didn't have that like base of family anymore. And I had been dealing with my parents' divorce in such like an adult way, I had been like also kind of their intermediary and like figuring out like, oh, how can we figure this out, and like giving them advice and being really mature about it. And it's not even that they wanted me to do that. They were telling me the whole time like, are you sure you're good? Like maybe you should be sad too. But I was like, no, I'm good. I'm great. And then this meditation, for some reason, it just tapped into it, and I was like curled up in bed like, oh my God. And I had this epiphany, like, I understand why my body chose eczema over this feeling, because this feels so scary. And that was really the opening up to being like, I trust this work now. Yeah, that was crazy.
I mean, I can resonate with that so much. Thank you so much, Maya, for coming on the podcast, for sharing all of this. It is incredibly fascinating, incredibly intriguing, so much useful information that you shared. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's actually so like cathartic to go through this whole health journey out loud with someone. So thank you for having me. I hope it helps someone. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.